with the premier, that's what they call their governors of their provinces, the premier of Alberta, Jason Kenney. And before I get to him, I just want you to understand, even the State Department, they had review after review under the Obama administration, and everybody knew it was good policy. It was good for Canada. It was good for the United States. It was good for the consumer. It was good for tens of thousands of workers. There is no more fanatical movement, although I'm not sure that that's true. Well, yes, I am sure. There's no more fanatical movement. There are equally fanatical movements to the environmentalists. These people are crazed. They are, I regard them as essentially soulless. And they need to fill that vacuum with some passion. So they have a passion for ending any use of fossil fuels, but they don't advocate nuclear power. So that it's all a moral and intellectual fraud. There is clean energy, but they're opposed to it. They have this romantic vision of windmills throughout the world, those ugly, gigantic users of space, of rural areas, hopefully. Who knows if they'll get more urban. And that and the sun will just power us. Of course, there will be some other crisis then. My whole life, the left has created crises. Life could have been, in this United States, remarkably calm. But the left is composed of people who hate calm. Any of you who have a drama queen or a drama king in your family knows exactly what I'm talking about. Calm drives them crazy. There is no meaning to life if there is no excitement. So they create excitement because their lives are boring. That's the environmentalist movement, and it will destroy people's jobs. It is composed of overwhelmingly upper middle class and upper class white people. Isn't that interesting? Because they're the most comfortable, generally speaking, in the society. So they could afford to waste their time. They could afford to put people out of work, just as Newsom could afford to put all the restaurants out of business. These people aren't hurt by their policies. It's one of the definitions of a left-wing politician. Those who are not hurt by their policies that hurt millions of others. That's the way it works, is it not? Well, we're going to put on now, he was on MSNBC, it's an interview with the Premier of Alberta.
Thanks. Great to be here, Joshua.
What was the most important aspect of the Keystone XL pipeline to Albertans? Was it jobs, or was there more to it?
Well, jobs are critical, of course. It would create tens of thousands of good jobs on both sides of the border. And I should point out that most of the big American construction unions that supported Mr. Biden's campaign were also strong supporters of the project. But there's a bigger context of continental energy security. We both know the United States has paid a great price to maintain energy security in the past. And I think it's much to the U.S.'s advantage to have a safe, reliable, environmentally responsible source of energy rather than having to depend more on OPEC dictatorship energy. Secondly, if this energy does not move by pipe, it will move by rail. And even President Obama's State Department concluded that would actually increase carbon emissions. So we think this is good both for national security, jobs, and the environment.
Okay, you have part two. We'll get to it in a moment. The construction unions supported Joe Biden. There's a reason. Unions don't give a damn about workers. They give as much, they care about workers like the teachers' unions care about students. Okay? On the left, all through its history, The group that they spoke on behalf of was I have a vision. I always have images in my mind when I speak. I'm imagining cutout characters that are not real, and they are purported to be real. Look at these dancing characters, but they're really made out of plastic or whatever. That's how the left regards those in whose name it speaks, whether it's students or blacks or women or workers. So the construction union supported the man who was crushing tens of thousands of their jobs. For no good reason, I might add. No good reason. What I'd like to know is, and I wish I knew this because it's sort of my responsibility to know, how can a president alone wipe out the pipeline? Do you know? What is his constitutional authority?
It's not a treaty.
It's just a what? I know it's not a treaty, so therefore, so it never went to begin with. It never went through Congress. See, if it went through Congress, it would pass because people could not face their constituents and say, I voted against it. We sort of elect a dictator, whichever party. There's a certain, unless they're held in check, which this president is not held in check. I believe that I know a lot more about the XL pipeline than President Biden. All he knew was the left wanted it, no skin off his back. He'll look like an environmentalist activist, and the left will be thrilled with him. That was it. So what? So the prime minister, I was going to say, the premier of Alberta, I mean, what he said was so coherent. Aside from putting tens of thousands of people out of jobs, we're going to now ship the oil by train, which is considerably more dangerous and potentially toxic. And the staggering success of the Trump administration in making America an exporter of energy instead of an importer, that will be undone, presumably. This is a very terrible thing, the XL pipeline issue. Here's part two. Remember, this was on MSNBC. This is not from Fox. Take it away. Part two.
You have called for some kind of compensation in exchange for this pipeline being called off. How would that work?
All right, well, here is response when we come back. I don't want to interrupt the premier of Alberta. This is one show where province premiers are just simply not interrupted. It's a policy I've had since I began broadcasting. We'll be back.
That's Prager Show, live from the Relief Factor pain-free studio.
Trending now on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Now, Congressman, there's a Washington Post story this morning. China turbocharges bid to discredit Western vaccine spread virus conspiracy theories. The most recent one being that hot buns brought the new virus in from outside. Ought Twitter and Facebook to be shutting this down? I believe this is actually inimical to the world to allow this to go on. Ought Facebook and Twitter to shut down this propaganda?
Well, in the midst of the pandemic in March, when Facebook and Twitter were allowing CCP apparatchiks to spread earlier conspiracy theories, such that the United States Army was responsible for the outbreak of the virus, I wrote a letter to @Jack telling him that at a minimum, he should kick Chinese officials off his platform. And I think the simple standard should be, if a foreign government does not allow their own citizens access to the platform, then its government officials should not have access to the platform in order to spread dangerous propaganda and dangerous conspiracy theories. And I think particularly at a time when these platforms are shutting down the president of the United States, the American people see an obvious double standard one that's deeply dangerous and inimical to Western values, and really harms the United States in the immediate and harms American values over the long term. So I would really urge @Jack and all these other tech bros to reconsider their policies.
And I would point out what Tony Blinken said yesterday means this is not a partisan issue. This extends from Team Biden to Team Trump, from Mike Pompeo to Tony Blinken. They are all unified that China is committing genocide.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Albert Mohler for Townhall.com. The American experiment is founded upon a presupposition, a prior commitment to an ordered liberty, an established order. That means policies. It means a covenant. In our case, it means a constitution. As of right now, the U.S. Constitution is the longest surviving written constitution in human history. It's a remarkable document. All of that came to the fore in violent events that interrupted the joint session of Congress to count the votes of the Electoral College. At the end of the day, our constitutional order proved itself once again resilient. But that doesn't take away any of the tragedy and the horror of what took place. It was an enormous stress test on ordered liberty, a stress test brought on by the President of the United States.
We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. You don't concede when there's theft involved.
It's an opportunity for the right, the left, conservatives, liberals, all Americans to repudiate political violence and reaffirm, once again, our commitment to ordered liberty. It's the American way. I'm Albert Mohler.
The Pepperdine School of Public Policy, America's unique graduate program for leaders. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
And I was just waiting for that 10-second attempt where the incoming president would have said, "It stops now. We're not going to demonize Americans because of their skin color. We're not going to say the National Guard is 90% white males, therefore they're a domestic threat, and we're not going to have a cancel culture on anybody who votes Republican." Am I dreaming? Are we condemned for the next 4 years to see even more cancel culture? As somebody who's in the bloodstream of the media, what should we prepare for?
I don't know if I'm in the bloodstream anymore, but I've certainly spent a lot of years in it. And I do think we are in for that. I think, Chris Wallace was saying that the Joe Biden speech was the most, it was like the greatest he's ever heard.
We played
the most unifying.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so
I'm well aware. God, is this relief factor thing a pain in the ass? Hello, my friends. I'm Dennis Prager. It is difficult to overstate my... What's the word I would look for? The word that came to mind is disgust, but I don't know if that's the word I want to use. So the jury doesn't have to put that in its mind. My moral contempt on behalf of all these workers who won't get work, and on behalf of the environment, because the pipeline is much better than going by train for this oil. But I will read to you from today's New York Times, from a piece by an environmentalist, to give you an idea how dangerous the environmentalist movement is. These are crackpots, my friends. They're crackpots. These are the empty lives of people who want to upend the world. This guy in the New York Times today does say that. I don't want the world to be anything like it was because of global warming. Why are you still scared of global warming when basically nothing has happened? I don't deny that there's any warming. I just deny that the consequences are an existential threat. Has your life changed because of global warming? I just finished reading a book about 1927 about in the 20s, the incredible flooding that took place and horrible heat wave. All of this before carbon dioxide was a major issue. Where are all the seaside buildings that are getting flooded? Why are people buying expensive properties on the Pacific and the Atlantic and on the Gulf Coast? Why? Because they vote for hysterics and they live normal. So here is the continuation of the MSNBC interview with the Premier of Alberta.
In this pipeline, the actual border crossing, which is subject of the presidential permit and now veto, is in place. It was built last July. So our point is that investments were made on the basis of the predictability of the American regulatory system, on the approvals that were in place. Those things have now been retroactively repealed by President Biden on Wednesday, and we think that's a violation of at least of the spirit and probably the letter of the investor protection provisions of the NAFTA, which have been carried forward. You know, we fought hard against President Trump's effort to rip up NAFTA. We're glad that President Biden wants a constructive relationship with us. One way of demonstrating that would be, I think, to say, hey, sorry about this. We disagree about the pipeline, but we recognize that the U.S. has changed its mind and at least to provide some compensation to those who invested.
A lot of the conversation on this side of the border has had to do with how the Keystone XL pipeline affected indigenous lands. That was one of the reasons why I think millions of Americans ultimately said that this is not a good idea. What would you say to folks here in the U.S. who say, sorry about your investment, investments are inherently risky, sorry you lost your money, but there are also perhaps larger imperatives at play here?
Well, Joshua, I'd say a couple things. First of all the polls indicate majority support in the U.S. for the project, including amongst Democrats and union members. Secondly, every state government along the route supports it. It's gone through exhaustive, over a decade of environmental assessment. The Obama State Department determined it would actually reduce carbon emissions versus moving it by rail. I think indigenous communities would, it's a lot safer for the energy to move, again, underground and modern technology as opposed to overground by rail. And finally, the company, TransCanada Energy, was negotiating equity ownership arrangements or partial ownership with Native American communities, what we here call First Nations. Finally, you should know that the energy comes from the Canadian oil sands, which has the overwhelming support of our Native American communities here, our First Nations. Many of them are business partners with the energy companies in responsibly developing that.
Last 10 seconds, would it not be better to just shift to renewable sources of energy and leave tribal lands alone?
Well, we certainly in this province, we have a higher share of renewables, but as long as the world needs oil and gas, I think it's better that it come from a rights-respecting democracy like Canada in partnership with our Indigenous people, as opposed to coming from OPEC dictatorships.
Jason Kenney is the premier of the Canadian province of Alberta.
The guy was really eloquent. You know, I love that. So investors take risks. Yes, investors take risks on their investment. They don't take risks on being illegally shut down. That is not in the calculation. But to give you an idea, when I say the environmentalist movement, these are crazed human beings. They're crazed. They are a much greater danger to humanity than global warming. Listen to this article in the New York Times today by a crackpot named Roy Scranton, the director of the Notre Dame Environmental Humanities Initiative. Shows you how much money there is to pay people to do nothing. Wow, he's the director of the Notre Dame Environmental Humanities Initiative. Can you imagine picking up the phone as his person who picks up the phone for him? Hi, this is Roy Scranton's office at the Notre Dame Environmental Humanities Initiative. That's a lot. He's author of a cheerful book, Learning to Die in the Anthropocene. There's a very sick world out there. This is the ending of his article in the New York Times today. None of this will matter, though, if our preparations do not include imagining a new way of life beyond this one. After the end of fossil-fueled capitalism, not a new normal, but a new ethos adapted to the chaotic world we've created. Yep. The first thing we need to do is to let go of the idea that life will ever be normal again. The left hates that idea. Normal life to a leftist is a cross to Dracula. Frenzy is their norm, and people vote for them because they don't understand the danger of the left. They don't. It's apocalyptic danger. They admit it. Look, I'm reading to you. We don't want the normal. Yes. Elsewhere, I've called this learning how to die. I put before you life and death. You shall choose life. Deuteronomy.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
And I was just waiting for that 10-second attempt where the incoming president would have said, it stops now. We're not going to demonize Americans because of their skin color. We're not going to say the National Guard is 90% white males, therefore they're a domestic threat, and we're not going to have a cancel culture on anybody who votes Republican. Am I dreaming? Are we condemned for the next 4 years to see even more cancel culture? As somebody who's in the bloodstream of the media, what should we prepare for?
I don't know if I'm in the bloodstream anymore, but I've certainly spent a lot of years in it. And I do think we are in for that. I think, Chris Wallace was saying that the Joe Biden speech was the most, it was like the greatest he's ever heard, and the most unifying. Yeah, okay, so, look, I appreciate the politics doesn't always have to be a blood sport, that kind of thing. That's fine, that's good messaging. But the race sort of messaging throughout, which is divisive, it's very divisive, just telegraphed to his supporters and everybody that they're going to double and triple down on this. I mean, we're stuck with this narrative about white supremacy and about all Trump supporters being essentially Klansmen. That is what they believe, not just from them, but from the media. And I really think, that if people don't start standing up and challenging this, and I know it's easy for you and me, we have platforms, we have microphones, but I mean civilians, regular people need to start standing up and saying, just stop. I'm not going to let you do that to me, to my company, to my country. I am not going to let you reduce the discussion to divisiveness over race. I refuse.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
Was this administration and this presidency worth it? Some people are saying he didn't achieve anything. There were no accomplishments, a lot of promises, not a lot of follow through. It's just not true. And as soon as he won in 2016, they spied on his campaign, Crossfire Hurricane. They entrapped Michael Flynn in the early days of it, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, none of whom have been held accountable, by the way.
Correct.
And I don't think a Biden Justice Department is going to be quick to indict Peter Strzok or Lisa Page or Brennan or Clapper or any of those folks. And so none of that will probably ever be brought to justice. And so, but from the minute he became president-elect, they all of a sudden, they immediately started to launch everything they possibly could to undercut him.
Instantly, and that was their game plan from day one, present this unified front from the Democrat Party and from the political left to take him down at every possible second.
And despite that, President Trump remained focused all throughout his transition. remained focused all throughout the early days of his presidency and even through the toughest parts of his presidency.
Being impeached twice, for
Being
example.
impeached, and also the special counsel with Bob Mueller. And with all of that in front of him and all of the difficulty and all of the headwinds, President Trump still had an unprecedented amount of accomplishments. And we're going to go through that list. And we're going to go through the sound and also just some of the fun moments.
The highlight reel.
Remember when Kanye West came to the Oval Office?
I was an intern at the White House.
Were
That
you
was
really?
my first day of my internship when Kanye West was there.
It's wild. And amongst many other moments that I don't think we will ever forget, Chuck and Nancy with Donald Trump in the Oval Office, so many moments. And the underlying theme is a president that did things differently to accomplish things for you and for our country.
Hello, my friends. I'm Dennis Prager. A lot of you are calling in about Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway owning the railway that will carry the fuel. I don't believe that Biden did it for Warren Buffett. I think he did it for the left-wing environmentalists. This is certainly a benefit to Berkshire Hathaway. But it is not. I don't believe it is the reason. The reason is ideological. These people are ideological. That's what motivates them. But the opposition to this has not been because of giving the railroad company, giving the railway, not the railroad company, but giving the railway profits. It's been global warming. But I'll take one call on it so that people can express themselves. Hello, Paul in St. Paul.
Hi, Dennis. We've chatted before. I cannot corroborate this, but I heard that on the 21st, Berkshire Hathaway stock went up over $1,000, consequently netting Warren Buffett over $1.5 billion. Now, again, I can't corroborate this. I heard it on a friend of mine's podcast, whom I trust very well.
All right, forgive me. Let me just say to all callers, if you can't corroborate it, please don't tell me that on the radio. When you're on the air, you have the same legitimacy as I do. So that's all. It's just a request, and I appreciate Paul's honesty in saying he can't corroborate it. But if you can't corroborate it, don't tell me. Okay, it's very, very important. The reason this was done is because of the environmentalists, all right? Money is powerful, but ideology trumps money very often. These people, let me ask any one of you who is a religious Christian, what's more important to you, money or your faith? Okay, it's a rhetorical question. The answer is your faith. More important to the environmentalists is their faith. This is a faith. This is a cult. Environmentalism is a cult. It's a death cult. That's why I read to you from today's New York Times. We're a guy who has written, what is it? What is the name of that book? Learning to Die. Yes, Learning How to Die. And he writes, our preparations must include imagining a new way of life beyond this one, after the end of fossil-fueled capitalism. Not a new normal, but a new ethos adapted to the chaotic world we've created. He begins, what is the normal that he loathes? It's about, let me find that. It's a long article. About how life was normal. People went into their cars and people went into stores and people would go out to eat and people just not anymore. We'll have to have a new normal here. I'll look up the word refrigerator because I remember that was part of it. And if I really had taken typing as a kid, it would have been better. Anyway, I'll find it. It's a we should put the piece up actually. So you will know what is in store for you if the left takes over, which it is doing. No more new normal, my friends. Climate change is upending the world as we know it, and coping with it demands widespread radical action. Yep. And this was, and they have all said this. This was sort of a preview. That's the best word. A preview of what they would like to do in controlling your life. What has happened now? By the way, that reminds me to please, if you're in California, you must work on signing the petition to recall Gavin Newsom. The illegality and the immorality of the crushing, and almost unique in the country. You own a restaurant in Florida, you can feed your family. You own a restaurant in California, you cannot. Now, why aren't they dying in droves in Florida, which is so open? Why? And with the largest proportion of elderly in the country, second only to, of all places, Maine. 1-8-Prager-776. You are listening to the Dennis Prager Show, and it's a pleasure to remind you about Relief Factor. If you have joint or muscle pain, this is a miracle. It is. What can I don't know what else to say. They've invented something tremendous. And they have a very interesting statement to make, and that is, you will know within 3 weeks if it works. So they have a 3-week price, $19.95 plus shipping. It is all available at relieffactor.com, 800-500-8384. Read what people have attested to on the impact of Relief Factor in their lives. Relieffactor.com, 800-500-8384.
The Dennis Prager Show.
This is Albert Mohler for townhall.com. The American experiment is founded upon a presupposition, a prior commitment to an ordered liberty, an established order. That means policies. It means a covenant. In our case, it means a constitution. As of right now, the U.S. Constitution is the longest surviving written constitution in human history. It's a remarkable document. All of that came to the fore in violent events that interrupted the joint session of Congress to count the votes of the Electoral College. At the end of the day, our constitutional order proved itself once again resilient. But that doesn't take away any of the tragedy and the horror of what took place. It was an enormous stress test on ordered liberty, a stress test brought on by the President of the United States.
We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. You don't concede when there's theft involved.
It's an opportunity for the right, the left, conservatives, liberals, all Americans to repudiate political violence and reaffirm, once again, our commitment to ordered liberty. It's the American way. I'm Albert Mohler.
The Pepperdine School of Public Policy, America's unique graduate program for leaders. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
And I was just waiting for that 10-second attempt where the incoming president would have said, it stops now. We're not going to demonize Americans because of their skin color. We're not going to say the National Guard is 90% white males, therefore they're a domestic threat, and we're not going to have a cancel culture on anybody who votes Republican. Am I dreaming? Are we condemned for the next 4 years to see even more cancel culture? As somebody who's in the bloodstream of the media, what should we prepare for?
I don't know if I'm in the bloodstream anymore, but I've certainly spent a lot of years in it. And I do think we are in for that. I think, Chris Wallace was saying that the Joe Biden speech was the most, it was like the greatest he's ever heard.
We played
the most
it.
Unifying.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so look, I appreciate the politics doesn't always have to be a blood sport, that kind of thing. That's fine. That's good messaging. But the race sort of messaging throughout, which is divisive, it's very divisive, just telegraphed to his supporters and everybody that they're going to double and triple down on this. I mean, we're stuck with this narrative about white supremacy and about all Trump supporters being essentially Klansmen. That is what they believe, not just from them, but from the media. And I really think, that if people don't start standing up and challenging this, and I know it's easy for you and me, we have platforms, we have microphones, but I mean civilians, regular people need to start standing up and saying, just stop. I'm not going to let you do that to me, to my company, to my country. I am not going to let you reduce the discussion to divisiveness over race. I refuse.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Charlie Kirk.
Hi, everybody. This article in the New York Times, plus the XL pipeline issue, is preoccupying me, by an environmentalist at some Notre Dame organization. Man's a crackpot. They're all crackpots. I have a riddle which I've told you a number of times. I made it up. What do you call a religious person who says the world is coming to an end? A crackpot. What do you call a secular person who says the world is coming to an end? An environmentalist. As the pandemic has worn on, the desire to get back to normal has increased, and I worry, this is this man I'm reading from, that the hope for radical positive change has subsided. But we must not let it dissipate. We can't afford to, because we won't see normal again in our lifetime. Our parents and grandparents burned normal up in their American-built cars, with their American lifestyles, their American refrigerators, and American dreams. Ah, yes, how disgusting. Middle-class life is the nightmare of the left. People driving to work, having a picket fence around their own home instead of an apartment in downtown urban areas, having 2 refrigerators perhaps, 2-car garage, going to a Rotary Club meeting. This actually has a viscerally negative impact on a leftist. That is a nightmare. It is so unexciting. That's the problem. It's not exciting. Saving the world is exciting. Capitalist normal. Oh my God, it's the worst. Their American lifestyles, their American refrigerators, and American dreams. And now China and India are doing it too, because capitalism is global, and we sold it wherever we could. More than 3/4, okay, then the CO2 emissions figures. That's right. No more normal, folks. God, I feel bad for kids today. Nothing's normal. Men give birth. That's normal. Right? Drag Queen Study Hour. That's normal. America was founded in 1619, not 1776. That's normal. Refrigerators and cars. That's this American dream crap. But vote for us. Vote for us. We will upend life because, as you know, capitalism is terrible. And since you're so ignorant because you went to an American school, public or private, you have no idea what socialism and communism have wrought in this world. You have no idea. What percentage of Harvard juniors can identify Pol Pot? And you say, oh, come on, give me Pol Pot. Everybody knew who Pol Pot was when he murdered 1/4 of his own people in the 70s. pretty big news. I'm not sure that many could identify Stalin. They might be able to say a Russian leader. How many people did Mao kill? They wouldn't have a clue. Didn't know he killed anybody. Reading a book on the Vietnam War, a gigantic book that came out, Max Hastings, who seems very fair because he acknowledges the evils of communism in Vietnam. Ho Chi Minh got to power the same way Mao did, through terrorizing the peasantry. You didn't cooperate with the local communists. They would take a bunch of people and they would bury them alive to terrorize the others to support the communists. Well, anybody know about that? I knew about that. Do you know what I said, by the way? I said on my radio show very early on, I knew more about North Vietnam than the average South Vietnamese. And it turns out it's exactly what he writes in this book. This British historian who thinks the war, to the best of my knowledge, was a mistake. He has no axe to grind except, to the best of my knowledge, to tell the story as it happened. They were shocked at what the communists did when they got to South Vietnam. Look, there are a lot of South Koreans who want to make peace with North Korea because they probably got as factually challenged in education about communism in South Korean schools as they do in American schools, which is mind-blowing, just mind-blowing. Why there aren't annual Thank You America parades in Seoul. One of the wealthiest countries in the world now, South Korea. You're probably using a Korean phone, and you may well be driving a Korean car and using a Korean screen to watch movies. This is all 100% because of American debts. 37,000 died to keep these people free. And then you got anti-American demonstrations. Everything I see in the world vindicates the Judeo-Christian worldview. Human nature is pretty rotten. It can be beautiful. That's the thing. There are beautiful people around. But human nature, it's really... I have a lot of questions for God. And I mean this quite sincerely. Aside from why did he invent the mosquito? I admit that's still number one. Number two, why'd you make human nature so flawed? How do you bury people alive and then have dinner? We'll be back.
The Dennis Prager Show, live.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Muhammad is in Texas. Muhammad, you're on The Larry Elder Show. Thank you so much for calling. I appreciate it.
I've been listening in. You're making some points, but I also realized that when Louis Farrakhan had tried to put his platform out, you know, he's very radical with his views in the Second Amendment or the First Amendment or whatever. I think it's just a...
Wait a second, Muhammad. Farrakhan still has his Twitter account. Donald Trump's Twitter account has been permanently banned.
Okay.
Are you aware of that?
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
No, I was not aware of that.
Yeah, you can also go on YouTube and see his videos. One more thing, Muhammad. One more thing. Minister Farrakhan took a photograph with Senator Obama. This is before Obama decided to run for office, and the reason he was meeting with Farrakhan and other black leaders is because they knew that this was going to be a young rising star, and everybody wanted to talk to him. So they took a picture with him. The guy who took the photograph, Muhammad, did not reveal the photograph until after Obama had finished both his terms because he knew that the photograph would hurt him. One of the big supporters of the Democratic Party is a Jewish guy named Alan Dershowitz. He's a longtime supporter of the Democratic Party, Mohammed. He said had he seen that photograph during the time Obama ran, he wouldn't have voted for him. My point is, Farrakhan has been protected. He's been protected. He's still on Twitter. This photograph, which could have damaged Obama, was sat on by the photographer who admitted he didn't want to reveal it because he didn't want to hurt Obama. So this man has been protected, Mohammed.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
One would think the Democrats would be a little bit happy, but as Tucker Carlson pointed out last night, winning elections or winning the election of 2020 seems to make them angrier.
Instead of taking victory laps, they are plotting revenge against the people they just beat. They're thinking of new ways to injure and humiliate and degrade their political opponents, make it impossible for them to work again, throw them in jail, destroy their lives. It's hard to describe how weird and strange and awful this is to watch. Imagine winning a tennis match in straight sets, then immediately leaping over the net and smashing your opponent in the face with your racket. It wasn't enough for you to win. You had to inflict physical pain. You couldn't be happy until another human being screamed in agony.
It is really peculiar to see the lack of, I don't know, even relief from the Democrats. Here's what Glenn Reynolds wrote at the New York Post. The Democrats
Wow, it is already the final segment of the first hour of the show. On this Monday, January 25th. It's a little... Oh, you know, I really missed a terrible thing because I love that stuff. The Living Martyr will now suffer a drop. So I'm warning him. But last week, we had... What was the 21 issue? There was 21, 21, 21. So January 21, 2021, but there was another 21. I'll get it for you. And I got a great text on that from one of the deep minds, and I mean it, that I know, Boris. Look it up. And if you're listening, Boris, Ty mój brat. There is a member of my synagogue who came from Russia, he and his wife, Soviet Union. Two of the most wonderful people I've ever known. Living Martyr knows them too. And he is watching with incredulity that the sweet land of liberty that he fled to is becoming like the country he fled. He's probably thinking he'll wake up and it will all have been a dream. And I wish that too. I would like this to have been a dream. You understand, the left does not want normal life. Normal life is not exciting to them. This is a crazed man, a crackpot, writing in the New York Times that I read to you. It's up at there you go, putting a column that I can't stand up at the website. You can enjoy it yourself, how terrible things are. And so we cannot go back to the new, what was it? Fossil fueled capitalism. So notice that's what was the capitalism part. You mean we won't have green-fueled, green-energized capitalism? See, that's what David Horowitz said in the beginning. The environmentalists are watermelons, green on the outside, red on the inside.
The Dennis Prager Show, live from the Relief Factor Pain-Free Studio.
Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
Let's get to our first sound here. Let's go back. Let's go to cut 36. And this was less about what actually the ramifications of this statement would be, because I know a lot of people are disappointed this actually never came to fruition. But it was more of, oh, he just said that, and he's not going to be restrained. Remember this moment? Play cut 36.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Yeah, because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
Epic. And that, I mean, I think that was one of the most defining moments ever in debate history.
Oh, easily.
And remember, everything that Donald Trump had to overcome, the Billy Bush tapes, all of the attacks from within. Let's go to cut 40, where it was President Trump coming down the golden escalators. Remember this? This is the moment that forever changed American politics.
Probably the most iconic moment of his campaign before the debates with Hillary Clinton.
No doubt. Without a doubt. And so then we also have, I think we have another clip here of cut 41. Listen to the promises he was making 5.5 years ago. Play tape.
I am officially running for President of the United States, and we are going to make our country great again.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
I just got a text message from Alex, which I love this. He said, here's some thoughts from a dad who is rocking his sleeping baby and thinking about what a crazy day it has been in our country. Very important text message I want to share with you if you're down about the events of today and the last few days and weeks. Don't feel sorry for or fear for your kids, because the world they're going to grow up in is not what it used to be. God created them and called them for the exact moment in the time they're in. Their life wasn't a coincidence or an accident. Raise them up to know the power that they walk in as children of God. Train them in the authority of His Word. Teach them to walk in faith, knowing that God is in control. He knows that your child can handle whatever challenge they face in their life. He created them specifically for it. Don't be scared for your children, but be honored that God chose you to parent the generation that is facing the biggest challenges of our lifetime. Rise up to the challenge. God isn't scratching his head wondering what He's going to do with the mess that we're facing. He has an army He's raising up to drive back the darkness. Don't let your fear steal the greatness that God has placed in them. It's hard to imagine them as anything besides our sweet little babies, and we want to protect them from anything that could ever be hard on them. But they were born for just a time, for such a time as this. I love that. I love that. And I feel that way about our role here. Our job here is that talk radio, a show like this one, was made for a time like this.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
How determined she was to be successful that the word no really wasn't in her vocabulary.
I was raised to not hear no. Let me be clear about it. So it wasn't like, oh, the possibilities are immense. Whatever you want to do, you can do. No, I was raised to understand many people will tell you it is impossible, but don't listen. I mentor a lot of people and I tell them, that there will be people who will say it's not your turn, it's not your time, no one like you has done it. And I'll tell them, and don't you listen? And then I will go on to tell them, I eat no for breakfast.
So I was not raised saying the possibilities are endless. I was raised saying other people are going to tell me that my possibilities are not endless, but don't listen to them. That was kind of weird. I eat no for breakfast. And I'm sure she does. That's my point. Do you really think that she believes that racism is a major factor in American life? I mean, honestly, I know what she says to people. Do you think she and Barack Obama legitimately believe that the same country under which she became vice president, he became president, respectively, hold people back? This is the kind of thing that they honestly believe. But then come election time, she'll find the race card, and she'll tell black people that they are oppressed, while telling them just now, you can do anything you want if you work hard, stay focused. I eat no for breakfast. But other people who are people of color, they can't eat no for breakfast because the man's holding them down. Not you, but them.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Now, Congressman, there's a Washington Post story this morning. China turbocharges bid to discredit Western vaccine spread virus conspiracy theories. The most recent one being that hot buns brought the new virus in from outside. Ought Twitter and Facebook to be shutting this down? I believe this is actually inimical to the world to allow this to go on. Ought Facebook and Twitter to shut down this propaganda?
Well, in the midst of the pandemic in March, when Facebook and Twitter were allowing CCP apparatchiks to spread earlier conspiracy theories, such that the United States Army was responsible for the outbreak of the virus, I wrote a letter to @Jack telling him that at a minimum, he should kick Chinese officials off his platform. And I think the simple standard should be, if a foreign government does not allow their own citizens access to the platform, then its government officials should not have access to the platform in order to spread dangerous propaganda and dangerous conspiracy theories. And I think particularly at a time when these platforms are shutting down the president of the United States, the American people see an obvious double standard, one that's deeply dangerous and inimical to Western values, and really harms the United States in the immediate and harms American values over the long term. So I would really urge @Jack and all these other tech bros to
Hello. Hello, my friends. I'm Dennis Prager. Welcome to the show. Analyzing the events of our day, trying to explain them, putting them in context. That is my job. I am a forest man, not a tree man. I see the forest very clearly. We need both tree people and forest people, and I am in the latter category, the big picture. I was explaining the big picture with regard to the terrible, destructive, irrational, fanatical decision to close the XL pipeline so that we can now ship oil in a more dangerous way by trains, on the phony notion that it was environmentally. There were two things that it disturbed indigenous populations, though I have no idea how true that is, and that it was environmentally dangerous. I want to just repeat one thing from last hour because it is so urgently important. People on the left loathe the normal. It took me a lifetime to realize that the end game of the left, aside from power, is chaos. That's why this article in the New York Times today is so significant. We put it up. It's so significantly destructive, the piece, so sick, that we thought you should read it. It is up at DennisPrager.com by an environmentalist. We cannot go back to the new normal, ever, ever. Fossil-fueled capitalism must end. That's why I ended the hour with David Horowitz insight of it at least 20 years ago, when he said to me, either privately or on the air, said the environmentalist movement is a watermelon. Green on the outside, red on the inside. God, was he right. The left uses the environment like they use workers, like they use blacks, like they use women. But it is all a hatred. You know why they hate capitalism? Because capitalism enables people to enjoy life and be normal. They don't want that. They hate. Normal is a nightmarish word to them. The fate of the Republican Party is in the hands of Republican senators if they vote to impeach a president, if they vote to impeach Donald Trump on the gigantic lie that there was an insurrection. That's the first part of the lie. Do you realize that? That's a lie. Insurrection is an attempt to take over the government. Violent overthrow of the government. Is that what happened that day? Or was it a stupid, destructive, moronic attack of overwhelmingly unarmed people so that they could sit in Nancy Pelosi's chair and pose for a selfie? No side has a monopoly on fools, even well-meaning fools. A lot of people are well-meaning fools. Storming the Capitol was an act of colossal idiocy. I said it at the time, said it within an hour. And remember what I said. Republicans condemn within hours when their side does something like that. Democrats either stay silent, defend, or wait a long time. Joe Biden took 5 days for his first tweet to condemn the staggeringly violent riots after George Floyd died. The future of the Republican Party is at stake because if a Republican senator votes for impeachment, to impeach a president who no longer is president, I mean, the whole thing is farce. It's just farce. Secondly, to impeach a man who didn't do anything with regard to an insurrection. If enough senators do that, then people will decide this party is a lost soul. So I just want Mitch McConnell has done a lot of great things to understand that. He's annoyed at the president, to the best of my knowledge, the former president, Mitch McConnell, for being so angry at the Georgia governor and secretary of state that he believes that he might have been partially, that is, Trump might have been partially responsible for losing the 2 Georgia Senate seats. I happen to understand that. And I defended Donald Trump and still do. I thought he was actually, in terms of what he did great things. Great things. If you measure a human by what they do, rather than by what they say or their demeanor, he did great things. But he was so transfixed by the belief that the election was stolen that, and I said this on the air repeatedly, Georgia is the issue. Georgia is the issue. Georgia is the issue. To have the Senate in the hands of the left is spectacularly destructive to this country. To have anything in the hands of the left. So I needed to tell you that. Spike Lee, I'm going to read you something from Microsoft. What is it, Microsoft? What does MSN stand for? The Microsoft News? Yeah, I think it's Microsoft Network. I don't don't think so. Okay, anyway, that's what it is. On Sunday, iconic filmmaker Spike Lee was honored by the New York Film Critics Circle with a special award for his short New York, New York, which was filmed during the pandemic. After fellow filmmaker Martin Scorsese presented him with the award, Lee did not mince words during his acceptance speech, which was pre-recorded on January 6th, the day when Donald Trump supporters invaded the Capitol. It's a very sad day in the history of America, said Lee in regards. Nobody knows how to write anymore. There's no such thing as in regards. Regards is send my regards to Broadway. Send my regards to Mom if you see her. It's with regard to, or there is no in. And anyway, just bugs me. This is the product of our teaching basic English. Okay. Anyway, said Lee with regards to the Capitol siege. Now, ready, folks? He continued bluntly, "We're at the crossroads now, and everybody please be safe. This is not a game. This President Agent Orange will go down in history with the likes of Hitler." Had you seen that? And nothing nothing happens to these people, right? No, will anything happen to Spike Lee? No, he'll just be a bigger hero to the left, with the likes of Hitler. Do you understand how that cheapens Hitler? Will the Anti-Defamation League condemn him? Of course not. Anti-Defamation League is woke, as is the vast majority of organized Jewish life. The left has taken over, just as it has taken over mainstream Protestantism and mainstream Catholicism. That's right. It was talking about the latter. I was so angry at Pope Benedict for resigning. He understood the issue so well. Somebody's got to explain to me why he resigned. I have not heard any convincing explanation. Was he forced out? I mean, if it was health, he certainly read his health wrong. He seems to be fine, right? I mean, the man is seems to be in better shape than Pope John Paul II was in his later years. I don't know why, but the world got stuck with Francis. Thinks capitalism is the enemy that you have to fight. Whereas Benedict understood the tragedy of Europe is not capitalism, it's secularism. You would think that that's what a pope would say, right? The godless world of the modern West is a big problem. Nah, that's secondary to capitalism and the normal. 1-8 Prager 776, we return.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
You know, I love the free market. Let Rumble do what it's doing. Let Parler find a bloody server. Don't go back to somebody who can just flick a switch. You're creating locals. But I don't want us to end up in conservative ghettos. That's why I love being on Twitter, because ridicule and humor is a massive tool that we can use against crazy people who think you're a racist because of your skin color. What are you expecting in the weeks and months to come? When AOC talks about blacklists, when you see Katie Couric talk about the need to deprogram or re-educate people, how concerned are you that sooner or later we're just going to be in our little ghettos, Dave?
Well, look, it's legit. You know, CNN did a piece this weekend, or was it just 2 or 3 days ago, sorry, about with this Facebook representative saying that, you know, they should basically take Fox News and the rest of them off the air. This is a real problem. And again, a bunch of us, it's like, we don't I accept that CNN exists. I believe it's a propaganda network that is part of the Democratic Party at this point.
But you don't want to shut it
MSNBC,
down.
I'm not shutting it down. I can make fun of them all the time. These are ridiculous partisan activists. I mean, here, work with me here, Gorka, on this one. You think Jake Tapper is a Democrat? You think Wolf Blitzer is a Democrat? You think Don Lemon's a Democrat? You think Jim Acosta is a Democrat? You think Brian Stelter is a Democrat? We can keep going with this. You think
They
Chris
all
Cuomo's a
worked
Democrat?
for Democrat congressmen. I mean, come on.
Right. But the point is, I'm not telling you that they should be shut down. I'm not trying to get their license yanked off. So I think your point is right. We need to fight to stay on those platforms, of course, and fight where the people are to get the new people. But I think we also have to find our own places that we are going to be protected. That's exactly why I started locals.com.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
The thing I'm super curious about, fight day. What does your day look like? That day must be the longest day of the year.
It feels like, honestly, like a minute is like 2
Forever.
days.
You're like, come on, let's get this over with, right?
Literally.
Do you sleep well the night before?
Nah. Yeah, usually I'm not sleeping,
You're in your hotel room going through.
Yeah. And you just got done doing like the weight cut. So, you just lost 20 pounds and you're completely depleted. You took all the salts out of your body. You're dehydrated because you're pretty much water loading. And then you take all the water and the weight off you and you're just completely dehydrated.
And you weigh in the day before the fight.
You do weigh in the day before the fight. So you got 24 hours to rehydrate and then you fight. So like that whole process is like you're rehydrating, you're trying to put the right nutrients in, but you can't put them in too quick because if you put them in too quick, your stomach and your system's not going to take it and you're going to throw up.
So do you have a nutritionist that comes with you that helps monitor all that?
Yeah, I have a nutritionist. So
it's a fascinating. So it's not just being able to psychologically prepare. You have to, because you're just cutting. You got to make the weight.
Yeah.
And if you don't, that's just, you're done. There's no fight. Right.
Well, there's a fight, but then you have to give up 30% of your purse. So if you're fighting for $1 million, you got to give up $300,000.
Have you ever not made the weight?
Never. I'm a true professional. I'm a businessman.
Yeah.
When I sign a contract, I'm a man of my word. I'm going to show up and I'm going to make weight and I'm going to handle my business like a businessman.
Wow. And so then the day of the fight, what time do you wake up? What does that look like? What do you do? Do you watch TV? Do you just say like, let's get this day over with as quickly as possible?
Usually when I wake up, I'll have like a bunch of carbs, like some pancakes, because I've been depleting myself low carbs for a couple weeks. So I'll have some pancakes, I'll have some eggs, some turkey sausage, some healthy stuff, and then it's just visualizing, watching a little bit of tapes to see what areas a guy's good in, and to see what his strengths are, and to see what his weaknesses is, and then it's just really just being by myself, just making sure it's just my thoughts and my feelings and my emotions. I don't want to hear what anybody else has to say. I want to be selfish in that moment. And that's probably a mean thing to say.
No, it's great.
All right, everybody, I want to tell you about a product that I profoundly endorse. Otherwise, I don't read on behalf of it, and I usually don't read. I usually just tell you about the product. It's called Navage, Navage. Cleans your sinuses, cleans your nose, and the effect is spectacular afterwards. How much you breathe better. I'm amazed that there aren't many products like this or that people don't know about it. A lot of people do. It is sold at CVS, Walgreens, Rite Aid, Bed Bath & Beyond, and Target. Or you could just get it from Navage.com. Read about it. In our family, we use it, and my stepson is asthmatic, and it's tremendous help for him. Navage.com. Navage.com, available at all those stores. Dennis Prager here, and the fanaticism of our time. Someone I deeply admire does not believe that the end goal of the left is chaos, but rather totalitarian order. I will read to you. I think their ultimate goal is a world ordered according to their vision and with them in charge of the most minute aspects of our lives. We will need digital passports in order to merely enter stores and do business when they get through. They want things set up in such a way that with the stroke of a computer keyboard, they can block a non-cooperative individual even from walking into a Ralph's. That's a supermarket. I don't think they're all over the country, but they're where we live. Much less getting on a plane. Maybe they even want to decide what time of day or night we can go for a walk, like Winston in George Orwell's 1984. What do you think, Living Martyr? You think it's to control people's lives, or do you think it's chaos, or both?
Control people's lives leading to chaos.
Control people's lives leading to chaos. Right. Yeah, chaos is the end. The giveaway on the chaos is that if you say men do not give birth, you're considered a hater. It's even more than that. You're actually considered anti-science. You realize that? Yep. What was it? The American Medical Association just came out with a statement on transgender. What was it I read? Which medical association? Oh, I'll let you guys know. Okie dokie. Paul in Woodland Hills, California. Hello.
Hi, Dennis. Really a big fan.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
I sure can.
So here's my situation, and I am a huge fan of Dennis Prager, and you and I agree we're in a civil war. The very first act is that you must be able to name your enemy, and you refuse to do it. You call it the left, but the reality is it's the Democrats. And you just said it in the previous segment, oh, the left got control of the Senate. But it's the Democrats who are in control. We have to name our enemy. And you have 1 billion views on Prager University, and the vast majority are young people under 35. When they go into that voting booth, they only see two choices, Democrats or Republicans. You have to name the enemy.
I agree with you. I don't think anybody listening to me thinks that I don't think the Democrats and the left are interchangeable. The Democrats are the party of the left. And I think it is see, it's not Democrats who are ruining kids' elementary schools, high schools, and colleges. It's the left. It's not the left that ruined football and basketball and baseball this year. It's not the Democrats, it's the left. The Democrats are a party. The left is the entire society. So that's the reason I concentrate on the left. I mention the Democrats regularly, but it transcends the Democrats. The left ruins everything it touches. It's not Democrats who ruined classical music, who ruined the arts, who ruined architecture. It's the left. It's not the Democrats who ruined late-night television. It's the left. That's the reason I talk about the left more. The guy who wrote this crackpot article in the New York Times today, it did so because he's a leftist, not because he's a Democrat. The left has taken over the Democratic Party. That is accurate. All right. And it was an important call, and it was an important response. So will Spike Lee pay any price for saying that Donald Trump is like Hitler? Of course not. Oh, the latest. That's right. I forgot. We're supposed to be in lockdown for another half year. New York Times yesterday, why vaccines alone will not end the pandemic. Even if millions, this is a bunch of epidemiologists who are quoted. Even if millions of people are vaccinated, millions more will still be infected and become ill unless people continue to wear masks and maintain social distancing measures until midsummer or later, according to a new model. When I hear a model, it ends all opposition. I genuflect. Oh, epidemiologists made a model. Wow. By scientists at Columbia University. Do you know that everything about that makes me not believe it? Model, scientists at Columbia. If precautions like working remotely, limiting travel, and wearing masks are relaxed too soon, this is now a year, too soon, it could mean millions more infections and thousands more deaths. Jeffrey Shaman, an epidemiologist at Columbia, who shared his team's modeling calculations. Social distancing, masking, and other measures should remain in place until late July. And that may be optimistic, said Dr. Shaman.
Sure, it's optimistic.
I'm sure, of course, it's optimistic. Late July, that's exactly half a year from now. That would mean a year and a half of Americans masking, which is a spectacular social price, not to mention kids not going to school. The havoc that epidemiologists have wreaked by people believing them is incalculable, because people have lost common sense. And epidemiologists who differ are shut down. Not all epidemiologists are fools. Most are, but not all. But the ones who aren't are simply shut down by Twitter, etc.
The Dennis Prager Show.
Trending now on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Senator Tom Cotton, good morning, Senator. Welcome. Good to talk to you. I know you believe a trial of former President Trump is unconstitutional. Is that the majority view of the Republican caucus?
Hugh, I think Senate Republicans are coming around to that view as they think more about it. I think for most Americans, it's just a very common sense position, though. The Democrats want to have a trial to convict and remove from office a man who left office yesterday. And by the time we get around to that trial in a few more days, that's going to be an even stranger proposition. Why are the Democrats spending the Senate's time in an obsessive inquest against a private citizen when we could be focused on what really matters, like getting more vaccines out to Americans or helping Americans get back to work or defending this country from the threats we face abroad? That's just the common sense view of things, Hugh. Now, I think the Constitution really couldn't be much plainer. It says that the President, the Vice President, and civil officers of the United States shall be subject to impeachment, conviction, and removal from office. Donald Trump is none of those things now. And to put a punctuation mark on that, Hugh, the reports I'm hearing in the Senate is that the Democrats propose not to have John Roberts preside over this trial because the Chief Justice only presides over the trial against the President. And if that's in fact their position, they are admitting that Donald Trump is no longer the president and therefore is not susceptible to impeachment proceedings. The whole thing, again, to me just shows how obsessive the Democrats and the media have become about Donald Trump over these last 5 years. Donald Trump may no longer live in the White House, but he is living rent-free in the heads of Democrats and the media.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
What do we make of Joe Biden occupying the White House? Because I have a lot of thoughts on it. Well, my main question is, what are your thoughts of where we are now?
We are in the midst of a new administration that is going to radically change every single piece of government that they touch. We have seen in the first 24 hours the signing of some 17 executive orders that have stopped the border wall construction. They have renewed visa permits coming from countries where people cannot be vetted, like Syria and Iran and Yemen. They have engaged our enemies in a completely different way. I mean, by that, China and Iran and Russia. They have already spent tax dollars that you and I have paid to help fund abortions that have already happened in other countries outside of our borders now. These are all things that they came in on day one, signed 17 different pieces of paper, and are already transforming American policy in all of these different areas into a very different direction.
But this is obviously what America wanted, is it not?
That's what we're told. That's what we have evidently walked through the process to approve of. And the question now becomes, what do Americans think about what they've gotten? And are they going to have buyer's remorse? If people thought that the unity that we heard so much about yesterday was going to be anything that resembled actual unity, they were mistaken.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
I love the free market. Let Rumble do what it's doing. Let Parler find a bloody server. Don't go back to somebody who can just flick a switch. You're creating locals. But I don't want us to end up in
Hi, everybody. Reading to you from the New York Times, epidemiologists who are at Columbia University. We must be locked down through July, wear masks, etc. through July, and that's optimistic, according to their modeling. And then we have Jenny Durkin, mayor of Seattle, who was truly distinguished herself. I think that the modeling is absolutely credible, said, like she knows. She knows that the Columbia University epidemiological model is credible, absolutely credible. Remember, the left says follow the science, but that's another fraud. They follow the scientists that they agree with, just so you know. Said Ms. Durkin, who has received praise, the New York Times article, for incorporating science into her own policy decisions. Is that awesome? The way they write these articles. The mayor said she was preparing Seattle to continue social distancing measures, quote, at least through the summer and probably into the fall. Well, so let me ask you a question. You, my dear listener, listener, either one. If my synagogue could meet in the building that does not allow it, we meet on Zoom every week, which has been a lifesaver. But if we could meet in person, nearly all of us of any age would go. Is that correct? Why? I asked this from the very beginning in one of my first columns, beginning with the lockdown in America, was why are conservatives less afraid than people on the left, including liberals? Their liberals and leftists are not different. The further left you move from the center, the more fear you have. Tell me why. I know the left's answer, because we deny science. Wow, so we deny science to the extent that we're willing to die. That's quite remarkable. You got to admit, at least, it's not tactical, it's sincere. But it's a very interesting question, is it not? We are as bombarded as people on the left with the news of the staggering number of people dying of COVID. Why are we less afraid? I'd go to a concert tomorrow. I'd happily go to a concert. I went to rallies since March. No mask, hugging strangers. And I'm a senior citizen. And I don't want to die. I love life. And I love my friends and family. And I want to see my grandchildren grow up. And my younger son just got engaged this weekend. I want to see his kids. So tell me why. Why am I less afraid? Well, I'll give you one reason. Because I do follow the science. I take hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, and zinc. I do follow the science. I wish scientists followed the science. But it's a really interesting question, isn't it? How much more fear there is on the left than on the right. Of everything. The only thing we fear is the left. They fear everything else. We fear the loss of freedom because the left does not believe in personal liberty. Never did. You are an ignoramus of history to deny what I just said. There is no example of the left not suppressing free speech. None. From the French Revolution to the Russian Revolution to the American Revolution today. This one, not the 1776. Liberals support free speech. The left has always crushed it. I fear that. Life is not worth living if you cannot express yourself. You become nothing but a biological species. You eat, you drink, you sleep, you have sex, you relieve yourself, and that's it. Anyway, the left believes we're just animals, so it doesn't trouble them. Yep, the fear issue is big. They are frightening. And liberals, the most naive people in Western history, vote left as they get crushed. Ask Alan Dershowitz. All right, Sean, what is it? ReliefFactor.com, 800-500-8384. Everyone I know, literally everyone I know whom I've asked, takes Relief Factor for some pain when they get it. My wife stops taking it, knee pain comes back. Give it the 3-week trial because you'll know in 3 weeks if it works. $19.95 in shipping, and that's it. ReliefFactor.com, 800-500-8384. People have told me they threw away their cane.
Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
You've been unafraid to wear the Make America Great Again hat, the Keep America Great hat. I guess when you win, you could do whatever you want.
That's true. And, I don't have these owners or people telling me what I got to do or the woke mob, trying to cancel me. We're independent contractors in the UFC. So, my beliefs, my freedoms don't stop there. I get to do whatever I want, say what I want, and I'm not going to be muzzled.
Yeah, what I love is seeing on ESPN, and they have to air your post-fight interview. You're wearing that beautiful Keep America Great hat. It's terrific. What's been the response from other fighters from that? Do some not like it? Some ask you to stop?
Some people, they get jealous. They want to follow that trend. They see that, the numbers that it's doing, and that call with the president on fight night, I had 10 million viewers on the ESPN page, so they can't deny me. I'm undeniable. Yeah. That's the highest rated and numbers the show's ever done with that call. So, I think a lot of people, they want to follow in those steps, but they don't want to receive the backlash. There's a lot of negative that comes with being a Trump supporter or a Republican,
Yeah.
It's not the cool thing.
I don't think Antifa is going to mess with you anytime soon, though.
I hope so, man. I was telling President, send me out there, man. Put me in the middle of the Antifa, man. Let me go.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Speaking of being outspent, it happened again. That's why you don't see any stories on CNN and MSNBC about how much money is being raised for campaigns, because then they'd have to concede that one of the reasons their candidate did as well as he did is because you guys outspent the Republicans 2-1. There's something called OpenSecrets.org. It's a website that tracks election spending. Democrat candidates and groups spent $6.9 billion, that's B as in bodation, compared to $3.8 billion for Republicans. Says presidential candidate Joe Biden, first candidate to raise more than $1 billion from donors. Trump raised $596 million. Dramatically outspent on every level. 2-1. And in some of the battleground states, especially in the waning days of the campaign, even more than that. Now, all of a sudden, money is not corrosive anymore. Have you noticed that? All of a sudden, nobody wants campaign finance laws anymore. Money is not bad. It's not unfair anymore for one side to outspend the other. When did that happen? Incredible. All of a sudden, money that we used to think was dark and seedy and special interests
Okay, all, Dennis Prager here. We had talk about fear and the lack of fear as you move toward the conservative end of the political spectrum. So my wife and I, we had two young people with COVID in our home. I quarantined. I broadcast from home the last 2 weeks. And I'm back in the studio now. I've gotten tested twice. And both, it's really almost an enigma. We did no social distancing whatsoever from two people with COVID. By the way, their symptoms were minimal. One had fever for 2 days. One had basically nothing. They're in their 20s, and even then, I sort of wanted to even test the contagion capabilities of COVID. We did not social distance at all and didn't get it. Actually, I'm so confident in hydroxychloroquine, zinc, and ivermectin that I was hoping I would test positive so that I would have the antibodies. That's the best vaccine you can get, is to actually get COVID. Being healthy and being on those medicines, drugs, whatever you wish to call them, I was quite confident that even if I got it, it would not be severe. I am sure that there are people who think I'm out of my mind. That my wife's out of her mind. Okay, fine. The question is, why do we not have the fear that people on the left have? People on the left are fearful of everything. They are afraid of les faits de la vie, the facts of life. Yes. I mean, think about all the things that they are. Of course, they fear global warming, right? Why? We don't fear that as much either. Turns out, though, all their fears, remember the hysteria? Many of you won't remember it. The hysteria, which is another word for excited lie, about heterosexual AIDS. It doesn't discriminate. Those are the headlines of Time and Newsweek. There's a great book on it by Michael Fomento, The Myth of Heterosexual AIDS. There's heterosexual AIDS in Africa, but not in the United States. I mean, it exists, but it was minimal. But they wanted to lie to you, to get you afraid, and to make sure that there was no stigmatization of gay men. course, gay women were the least likely group of all to get AIDS, so it wasn't exactly homophobic. They didn't follow the science. The science told us that IV drug users and gay men were overwhelmingly the people likely to get AIDS. They almost had a monopoly on it. But people were afraid of AIDS. The heterosexuals. So I've lived through all of these left-wing fears. And I read to you last hour. We can't go back. No more new normal. No more normal. No. Because one of the reasons is they hate the normal, and because they want to control your life. Okie dokie. And let's go to Mike in Rochester, New York. Hello, Mike.
Good afternoon, Dennis.
Hi.
Calling you a very, very sad, profound today. I went and saw my primary for regular routine. And I haven't seen her since before the pandemic last year. And if I did, it was just to get some blood work done. I'm 61, so it's just normal. But we got into the conversation of COVID, and I was stating a few points of view regarding the society and the suffering and the masks and things of that nature, and also that my daughter's going to be a teacher, and I'm worried about the effects psychologically. Anyway, I said to her I would prefer that they quarantine people that are sick and people that are vulnerable instead of quarantine healthy people for the sake of the sick, because it's never been done before in society. And she kind of intimated to me, I'll paraphrase, she said something to the effect of, well, if you were to be asymptomatic and or you were to have the virus and you walked out in public and infected somebody else and they died, she considered it to be a felony. And my jaw dropped right there when she said that.
You didn't happen to ask her about her view on hydroxychloroquine, did you?
I did. I didn't mention hydroxy. I mentioned ivermectin.
Okay, fine. Why did she say ivermectin?
She said none of those symptoms are therapeutic, and I asked her, even prophylactically, they have no effect. And she says, no, just listen to the CDC and Dr. Fauci. They know what's going on.
Right. So the joke is your doctor has killed more Americans than the people walking outside. That's the irony. I accuse the CDC and the whole gang of killing maybe hundreds of thousands, certainly tens of thousands of Americans, deliberately. Yes, how could it be deliberately? Not that they want them dead. Not everybody who deliberately kills people want them dead. They deliberately do something that causes them to die. So I want that to be clear. They were so disgusted with President Trump advocating hydroxychloroquine that they decided that any medicine taken in the early stages, including ivermectin, which the president never mentioned, is not to be used until one is essentially hospitalized, at which point it is often too late. His doctor kills people.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Senator Lindsey Graham last night with Sean Hannity on Fox News.
I had a great meeting with Senator McConnell today. I think every Republican sees the House process as an affront to the presidency and due process. So what's going to happen? If she delivers the articles to us, they'll have to be disposed of under the process of the Senate. If we could get 51 senators to dismiss, it's all over. There's more than a handful of Democrats praying that Joe Biden will get on the phone and call Schumer and say it's over, because they understand this is going to blow up in their face politically. I've never felt better about the Republican Senate conference being united behind the idea that what the House did was wrong in terms of process. And I think we're going to have an overwhelming Republican vote that this second impeachment of Donald Trump is unconstitutional.
Well, that was last night. Today, Chuck Schumer announced that Pelosi has informed him that the article of impeachment against President Trump will be delivered to the Senate on Monday, which paves the way for a trial. It's obviously a developing story. We're going to see what happens next. We're going to see what Republicans are made of. And honestly, I don't know that Rand Paul is incorrect. I think Rand Paul is absolutely right. There's been all this talk about a Patriot Party, a third party. If Republicans are stupid enough to vote to convict a guy who's already out of office of impeachment, of inciting an insurrection, there won't be a Republican Party left.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Senator Tom Cotton, good morning, Senator. Welcome. Good to talk to you. I know you believe a trial of former President Trump is unconstitutional. Is that the majority view of the Republican caucus?
Hugh, I think Senate Republicans are coming around to that view as they think more about it. I think for most Americans, it's just a very common sense position, though. The Democrats want to have a trial to convict and remove from office a man who left office yesterday. And by the time we get around to that trial in a few more days, that's going to be an even stranger proposition. Why are the Democrats spending the Senate's time in an obsessive inquest against a private citizen when we could be focused on what really matters, like getting more vaccines out to Americans or helping Americans get back to work or defending this country from the threats we face abroad? That's just the common sense view of things, Hugh. Now, I think the Constitution really couldn't be much plainer. It says that the President, the Vice President, and civil officers of the United States shall be subject to impeachment, conviction, and removal from office. Donald Trump.
Hello, my friends. Dennis Prager here. Chicago Associated Press report. Chicago teachers vote not to go and teach in schools. The Chicago Teachers Union said Sunday that its members voted to defy an order to return to the classroom over concerns about COVID-19. That's a courageous group of people, Chicago teachers, just like LA teachers, New York teachers. The decline of the prestige of the word teacher is one of the saddest things of my lifetime. Teacher, for anybody steeped in Jewish life, teacher was on the level, if not higher, than parent. The same root in Hebrew of Torah is the root of the word for teacher. It's in the feminine, Torah, and the word for female teacher is Mora. Same exact root, just different first letter. But the left has produced through education colleges the utter wastelands. I wish they were just wastelands. They're destructive. Weak, left-wing individuals, for the most part. There are some terrific teachers, fewer and fewer. Chicago Teachers Union is filled with shame over the profession. Setting up a showdown with district officials who have said that refusing to return when ordered would amount to an illegal strike. Chicago Public Schools, nation's third largest district, wanted roughly 10,000 kindergarten through 8th grade teachers. How many teachers have been infected and died from 5th graders? Probably zero on Earth. And other staffers to return to school Monday to get ready to welcome back roughly 70,000 students for part-time in-school classes starting February 1. No return date has been set for high school students, who of course should also be meeting. The teachers union, though, opposes the plan over concern for the health of its members and called on them to continue teaching from home in defiance of the district's plan. The union said the district's safety plan falls short and that before teachers can return safely, that's the key word, safe, vaccinations would have to be more widespread. We shall return. I'm Dennis Prager.
Trending now on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Question is on immigration. I asked Peter Baker yesterday if the president's new proposal of an 8-year path to citizenship and stopping the wall was an opening bid or a bottom line. And he agreed with me that if it's a bottom line, it's dead on arrival. Do you agree with that?
Well, I certainly hope so, and I'll do everything I can to make it so. But let's remember, Hugh, even if it's just an opening bid, there's an element of kabuki theater here. Joe Biden may be expecting some willing Republican accomplices to swoop in at the last minute with a big leap of enforcement, like money for drones or something at the southern border. We should be anticipating that highly stylized gambit right now, and we should reject it out of hand right now. Republicans should not pass an amnesty first bill that puts an amnesty in place for 15 million illegal immigrants while also increasing guest workers' visas at a time when we still have 10 million people out of work. The focus should be on getting Americans back to work and getting our border secure and enforcing immigration laws at the place of employment. This bill, by the way, is not just lacking in enforcement, Hugh. It actually guts enforcement. It guts the E-Verify program that we already have in place that some states use on a mandatory basis and we should use nationwide. So
let me ask you, Senator, very quickly, is it an absolute must-have, the completion of at least 700, and I would prefer 900 miles of wall of the sort that President Trump has built?
No, Hugh, I don't think the wall in itself is the only, or is a critical point that would get Senate Republicans to vote for an amnesty. No, we shouldn't proceed to a discussion of the bill that's going to be focused on giving American jobs to foreign workers.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Can you imagine the President of the United States feeling an obligation, I guess, to his people to bring up these two things, which I consider essentially fake? I mean, the idea that anybody that you know or I know would agree with white nationalism or domestic terrorism, much less be a part of it, is just outstanding. It is breathtaking to me that he said this in an inaugural speech where he's calling for unity. I just...
No, you're not by yourself. And there's a lot of people that are pointing to the same realities, that it's one thing to have rhetoric that talks about being unified. And here's something else I think we all need to just get over. Unity may on some level be virtuous, but it is not the highest of virtues. And there are virtues that are actually much more valuable from a moral and even civil scale. And one of those is freedom. Take out all of the references to unity in yesterday's speech and replace it with conformity. You have a better understanding of what the left actually means. But I think that there are some things that are far more important than unity. Clarity is one of them. To be clear and to clearly understand what truth is a far higher, greater virtue than unity. I also believe that at the end of the day, conformity is what they're really talking about. I believe that the defense of freedom is a greater virtue than what they're dealing with. So that's kind of where we're at.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
When you have AOC say that she is literally on camera, I am afraid of being shot by my fellow congressmen who are Republicans.
Think how crazy this is. So look, AOC goes on, and she'll call Ted Cruz a white supremacist. Ted Cruz isn't even white, and a whole bunch of other stuff, right? It's one thing you just call the white people white supremacists. You're also calling the Latino people white supremacists.
Look, if Candace Owens can be a white supremacist, then right?
I know exactly. But this concept where they've used emotions to supersede everything. She knows that she's not afraid that one of her fellow congressmen is going to shoot her. But think how dangerous that language is. And it's very tempting then for us to go in with equally as emotionally charged and over the top language. But that's just all of us going on the road to hell together. So the question really is like, well, what do you do? So what do we do in the face of a group of people who now have power, whose goal is to have power, who are telling us what they're going to do with that power? What do we do as people that don't want to use governmental power? This is the great challenge, I think, of our time for liberty-minded people. It's like, all right, we're live and let live, but if the other guys are trying to come onto our property and do stuff or indoctrinate our children or whatever it might be, then our live and let live has to have some limit.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
You've been unafraid to wear the Make America Great Again hat, the Keep America Great hat. I guess when you win, you could do whatever you want.
That's true. And, I don't have these owners or people telling me what I got to do, or the woke mob, trying to cancel me. We're independent contractors in the UFC. So, my beliefs, my freedoms don't stop there. I get to do whatever I want, say what I want, and I'm not going to be muzzled.
Yeah. What I love is seeing on ESPN, and they have to air your post-fight interview. You're wearing that beautiful Keep America Great hat. It's terrific. What's been the response from other fighters from that? Do some not like it? Some ask you to stop?
Some people, they get jealous, they want to follow that trend. They see that, the numbers that it's doing, and, that call with the president on fight night, I had 10 million viewers on the ESPN page, so they can't deny me. I'm undeniable. Yeah. That's the highest rated and numbers the show's ever done with that call. So, I think a lot of people, they want to follow in those steps, but they don't want to receive the backlash. There's a lot of negative that comes with being a Trump supporter or a Republican, It's not the cool thing.
I don't think Antifa is going to mess with you anytime soon, though.
I hope so, man. I was telling President, send me out there, man. Put me in the middle of the Antifa, man. Let me go.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Speaking of being outspent, it happened again. That's why you don't see any stories on CNN and MSNBC hee-haw about how much money.
Hello, my friends. I'm Dennis Prager. I dedicate this interview that I am about to have, dialogue/interview, to the Chicago Teachers Union, because the interview is in large measure, but not solely, about courage. Teachers of this country in many cities, lamentably cowardly, afraid of dying of COVID from third graders. Staggering. And they say they follow the science. One of my favorite thinkers on Earth, I admit that outside of Earth there may be many finer thinkers, but on this planet is Michael Walsh. Michael Walsh. I mean, I know Michael so many years, but I blow names all the time. I'm always happy I got my wife's name right. Michael Walsh is an original mind. That's the highest compliment I give. And he is a moral thinker. And whenever he publishes a book, I have him on. His latest is Last Stand. It's up at DennisPrager.com. Why Men Fight When All Is Lost. Michael has written a number of books about the situation of the human condition, which is my favorite type of book. This one is a fascinating book, taking battle after battle, but it's really not just about war or battles, it's about life, where people, knowing that they would die, kept fighting. Michael, welcome to the Dennis Prager Show.
Dennis, it's great to be back with you. Thank you for having me on.
For my listeners' edification, where are you now living?
At the moment, I'm at my house in rural New England, where it's a crisp 20 degrees or so at the moment. We're heading into the coldest part of the winter, so pretty soon we'll be down below zero and snug as bugs and rugs up here.
And the rest of the time?
I spent most of last year at my home in Ireland, Dennis, on the west coast of Ireland, where I rebuilt my great-grandmother's birthplace in honor of her and of my family some years back, and that's where most of my family is now, as a matter of fact.
That's quite a life. That's why I wanted people to know that. Have you emotionally connected to Ireland?
Well, I think it's always part of every Irishman's upbringing, Irish-American upbringing. There's a recognition of our heritage and where we came from, the struggles we had to go through to come here. Dennis, as you know, the history of Ireland is one of 700 years of oppression by the English and then 100 years of dying on rickety coffin ships coming over to America to try to start a new life and contribute something to this country. So, yes, I'm very fond of it. I'm related to most of the people in my very rural area who are first and second cousins, and it's just a wonderful place to be. It's going through, unfortunately, the same thing the rest of the world is going through right now with COVID madness and immigration madness, but it's still good old Ireland as far as I'm concerned.
Has the left taken over much of life there, like here?
Well, Ireland has a very unusual electoral system, which was, like most other horrible things, was imposed on us by the English, and the only other place that uses it is the island of Malta. So for those of you who are interested in exotic electoral systems, check out Ireland and Malta. But it effectively results in a one-party state. The two parties there, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, I won't bother to go into the etymology of the history, divided over the question of whether Ireland should sign the treaty that was negotiated after the revolution against England in the 1920s and 30s or not. And so that question is unfortunately still not settled because the British control 6 counties of the north. But it's forgotten by most people. So we have basically a uniparty system, and they dictate according to their whim.
But in general, like the schools in this country are essentially left-wing seminaries. Is that true there?
It's hard to say. The schools, until relatively recently, Ireland retained its Catholicism, but they've been busily demolishing that. So you are looking at the deinstitutionalization of a faith that kept the people together from the time that William the Conqueror and others landed. In this case, Strongbow, the century after Hastings, and from the time of Cromwell, when the persecution was so bad that the people were dispossessed of their language, their land. They were herded into churches and burned alive. They were executed in particularly gruesome ways. So the church held the people together, but now it's being deinstitutionalized. Abortion has been made legal. Gay marriage, of course, has been made legal. And so it's on the run, and I don't see things changing much. There's a great push for immigration from the third world, particularly Afghanistan, the Middle East, and Central Africa, because Ireland is considered too white. And there's even a program called Ireland 2040, which will change the ethnic makeup of the country irrevocably.
And I want to get to your book, obviously, but you're so interesting, and this is something that's new to most of my listeners. What is the rationale behind the notion that Ireland is too white? What is that? It is. Let me put it to you this way: if I asked somebody there, "Is Nigeria too black?" what would they say?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. The Irish are embarrassed. It's funny because, as you know, there's a left-wing historian named Noel Ignatieff, I think a Canadian, who wrote a book called How the Irish Became White, because they were never considered white, certainly not by the English, and barely by the Americans when we started coming here in really very large numbers in the mid-19th century. And so it's considered a kind of relic. People seriously ask questions why are there no black faces in medieval Irish history? And getting to your point about courage and about teachers, I mean, you just have to wonder, where does that kind of stupidity come from? If you say it's just the way it evolved, then it becomes a plot and it's racism and we've got to overcome it. Ireland's in the grip of the left pretty solidly at this point. I mean, what do you say to a country that legalizes abortion, then turns around and says, we need more people to come in because our pension system will fail, so therefore we have to increase the population?
Well, even putting abortion aside, you're entirely right, but that is the Achilles heel of socialism. Let's keep expanding the government, but somebody has to pay for the government. And if you don't have more young people, you got to bring them in.
Right. Well, that's Germany, for example, obviously, and that's to a lesser extent the United States. We are not in the worst possible situation here, unlike many of the European countries. It's interesting that Denmark...
I know. Go ahead. I know I was going to report that. Go ahead.
Am I stepping on your...
No, are you kidding? It's a non-issue. Go ahead.
Denmark has said the ideal number of new immigrants is 0. So that's a pretty brave thing to say in
and they
Europe
went
today.
further. I mean, that the whole essence of being a Dane will be changed.
Yes, and that's considered a racist statement
that's
by
the
left.
quintessence of racism.
Yes. But, how do the Jewish people feel about that, Dennis? What if you were told you have to cast aside 5,000 years of Judaic history and become something that you're not? I mean, what has held the Jewish people together in the face of hostility, provocation, persecution, etc.?
No, it is astonishing, isn't it? Of course you're right. Of course. I mean, even left-wing Israelis, or at least liberal Israelis, would think it preposterous. Let us have a plan, Israel 2040, because Israel is too Jewish.
Right. Yeah.
Right. It's beyond belief.
Well, now we wander into things that people aren't supposed to say or point out, and here we are back at courage again, aren't we, Dennis?
Courage is everything. And you know that. And the book is magnificent. By the way, I looked at the Amazon number. It's doing really well.
Oh, we were a huge hit. We sold out on day one. Day one, it was all copies were gone. So we had to scramble to get, 20,000-30,000 more copies in the pipeline over the Christmas break and with all the COVID slowdowns and everything. So we're doing very well, and that's thanks to people like you and my other friends on the conservative side of the aisle who have
Last
gotten behind
Stands,
it.
Why Men Fight When All Is Lost. Coming up with the inimitable Michael Walsh.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
I love the free market. Let Rumble do what it's doing. Let Parler find a bloody server. Don't go back to somebody who can just flick a switch. You're creating locals. But I don't want us to end up in conservative ghettos. That's why I love being on Twitter, because ridicule and humor is a massive tool that we can use against crazy people who think you're a racist because of your skin color. What are you expecting in the weeks and months to come when AOC talks about blacklists, when you see Katie Couric talk about the need to deprogram or re-educate people? How concerned are you that sooner or later we're just going to be in our little ghettos, Dave?
Well, look, it's legit. You know, CNN did a piece this weekend, or was it just 2 or 3 days ago, sorry, about with this Facebook representative saying that, you know, they should basically take Fox News and the rest of them off the air. This is a real problem. And again, a bunch of us, it's like, I accept that CNN exists. I believe it's a propaganda network that is part of the Democratic Party at this point.
But you don't want to shut it down.
I'm not shutting it down. I can make fun of them all the time. These are ridiculous partisan activists. I mean, here, work with me here, Gorka, on this one. You think Jake Tapper is a Democrat? You think Wolf Blitzer is a Democrat? You think Don Lemon's a Democrat? You think Jim Acosta is a Democrat? You think Brian Stelter is a Democrat? We can keep going with this. You think
they
Chris
all worked for Democrat congressmen. I mean, come on.
Right. But the point is, I'm not telling you that they should be shut down. I'm not trying to get their license yanked off. So I think your point is right. We need to fight to stay on those platforms, of course, and fight where the people are to get the new people. But I think we also have to find our own places that we are going to be protected. That's exactly why I started locals.com.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
The thing I'm super curious about, fight day. What does your day look like? That day must be the longest day of the year.
It feels like, honestly, like a minute is like 2
Forever.
days.
You're like, come on, let's get this over with, right?
Literally.
Do you sleep well the night before?
Nah. Yeah, usually I'm not sleeping, you know.
You're in your hotel room going through.
Yeah. And you just got done doing like the weight cut. So, you know, you just lost 20 pounds and you're completely depleted. You took all the salts out of your body. You're dehydrated because you're pretty much water loading. And then you take all the water and the weight off you and you're just completely dehydrated.
And you weigh in the day before the fight.
You do weigh in the day before the fight. So you got 24 hours to rehydrate and then you fight. So like that whole process is like you're rehydrating, you're trying to put the right nutrients in, but you can't put them in too quick because if you put them in too quick, your stomach and your system's not going to take it and you're going to throw up.
So do you have a nutritionist that comes with you that helps monitor all that?
Yeah, I have a nutritionist. So
it's fascinating. So but it's not just being able to psychologically prepare. You have to, because you're just cutting. You got to make the weight.
Yeah.
And if you don't, that's just, you know, you're done. There's no fight. Right?
Well, there's a fight, but then you have to give up 30% of your purse. So if you're fighting for $1 million, you got to give up $300,000.
Have you ever not made the weight?
Never. I'm a true professional. I'm a businessman. You know, when I sign a contract, I'm a man of my word. You know, I'm going to show up and I'm going to make weight and I'm going to handle my business like a businessman.
Wow. And so then the day of the fight, what time do you wake up? What does that look like? What do you do? Do you watch TV? Do you just say like, let's get this day over with as quickly as possible?
Usually when I wake up, I'll have like a bunch of carbs, like some pancakes, because, you know, I've been depleting myself low carbs for a couple weeks. So I'll have some pancakes, you know, I'll have some eggs, some turkey sausage, some healthy stuff. And then it's just visualizing, watching a little bit of tapes to see, you know, what areas a guy's good in and to see what his strengths are and to see what his weaknesses is. And then it's just really just, you know, just being by myself, just making sure it's just my thoughts.
Hey, everybody, I want to remind you that you can have great phone service for a grand total of $20 a month. I want to make sure that that is the price because it is, it's either that or $30 a month. And I have tested it out. And I should have, I'm very interested to get it to you right here. Let's see here. Pure Talk, let's see, top-rated wireless company by Consumer Affairs. Get $20 a month. It's so cheap, I wanted to make sure I was right. it's incredible. Unlimited text, unlimited talk, 2 gigabytes of data, $20 a month. Wait, just pound 250 on your phone and say Dennis Prager. Pound 250 Dennis Prager. One of the original minds of our time, Michael Walsh. We share a lot. We really do, because it includes classical music. That's a big part of your background, isn't it?
It is. I was a classical music critic for 25 years, first in Rochester, New York, where I went to college. I attended the Eastman School of Music, one of the great American conservatories. Then in San Francisco for a few years, and then mostly at Time magazine during the last of its great glory years, starting in 1981. And it was exhilarating, it was fun, I loved it. I still love music, but I no longer write about it because I pretty much have said everything I had to say, and obviously I wanted to move on.
Yes, I'm suppressing the desire to talk to you about classical music because I want to talk to you about your book. The book, Last Stands, Why Men Fight When All Is Lost. So what are the lessons that you derived from this courage and the battle after battle that you describe?
Well, this book is framed, Dennis, to pick up just a thread of our previous conversation about Ireland, with my father's experiences in the Korean War, where he was a young first lieutenant in the Marine Corps in 1950 and was at the battle not only of the Incheon landing in Seoul, but the famous battle of the Chosin Reservoir, which was itself a last stand for the Marine Corps, one that they survived, and obviously he did too. I think it's never give up is really it. It's to engage the enemy as you are engaged. With last stands, they generally, they always come as a surprise to the team on the short end of the stick, and the Marines were surprised by the sudden attack of the Chinese communists in late November of 1950. Obviously, Custer was surprised by the size of the Indian village when he attacked it at the Little Bighorn, etc. But the most important lesson that I derived, and this came directly from my father, who is still alive, he's 94 now and living peacefully in Florida, was that you don't react in fear. The instinct that keeps you alive is you, as he put it, you go to work. And that's how many soldiers will describe it. You follow your training, you don't panic, you don't break a line. When you break the line, you're dead, as the Romans discovered at the Teutoburg Forest, for example. You just put your head down. Battlefield deaths are whimsical. You can see why the Greeks believed in multiple gods. You have no idea whether you're going to get hit and killed by a lucky shot or you're going to survive a barrage. Grant, for example, at Shiloh was hit a couple of times. One of them hit his scabbard and sent his sword flying, but he was fine. Other men were killed instantly just as they approached the battle line. You don't know, so you can't care is the point, and you just go ahead and follow your training, because if you do that, you might survive. If you don't do that, you will die. And that's the simplest explanation of why men fight. There's others, of course, but that's how they live through these things.
The human tendency, which I personally try to guard against, is the belief that it was better in the past. It was better in the past about any or many given things. Certainly, not health-wise, but in many arenas. So, even acknowledging that danger, would you say that there was more courage in past generations?
I would say there was more duty. Courage is a funny thing. You don't know you have it until it's tested, and even if it's tested, you still don't know you have it. You only know it in retrospect. You don't want the man in your unit, and I say man, not woman, for reasons we could possibly go into later. You don't want the guy who wants to die on the battlefield. You don't want the showboat, the show-off, the quarterback of the team. You want somebody who wants to live through this. But the notion is about courage is you do your duty, you do your job, and the other thing I would add to why men fight is you fight for the man next to you. If we go back to the Greeks and Romans, the Greeks in the phalanxes, the Romans in the maniples, The idea was that you defended the man to your right. That is, your sword hand was generally your right hand, and if it wasn't, they made it your right hand, and your shield was on your left. So the whole giant hedgehog assembly was designed to protect the man to your right. This left the guys on the edges, of course, in some trouble, so you protected your flanks with cavalry. But that was it. You fight for the guy next to you, and the guy next to you is fighting for you. And it's that simple.
You write about battle after battle, so I'll pose a challenging question here. Do they differ? And if they don't, why didn't you just write about one battle?
Do they? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Do they differ?
Do they differ?
Yes.
Yes, they do differ in many ways. I mean, in some of them, the men all get killed, and some of the men survive. They differ from historical epoch to historical epoch. However, in one sense, they are all the same battle. I think the Greeks, for example, who really kind of are the archetypal examples of this. On the third day of Thermopylae, most classical battles lasted for one day, and then they were decided, and that was it. But the Greeks put up a stand, led by the Spartans, but with other Greek city-states involved, at the hot gates, at this very narrow pass between the sea and the mountains. On the third day of the battle, the Persians sent spies to see what the Greeks were up to, and they were exercising and combing out their long hair. This is how they reacted to this massive army that was coming down the pike to exterminate them. And I think that insouciance, in a way, does mark, with battlefield humor, gallows humor, many of the conflicts that I outline in Last Stands.
I talked with my wife about these issues, and we were wondering the other day, if America were invaded, have we produced a generation that would fight? And when we come back, I'd like you to answer that. I almost find it incredible that either of us would even ask the question. Because I'm saying literally, if the Chinese invaded this country, just to throw out a possible, I mean, it's completely improbable, but have we raised a generation that would fight? Back in a moment.
Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Senator Tom Cotton, good morning, Senator. Welcome. Good to talk to you. I know you believe a trial of former President Trump is unconstitutional. Is that the majority view of the Republican caucus?
Hugh, I think Senate Republicans are coming around to that view as they think more about it. I think for most Americans, it's just a very common sense position, though. The Democrats want to have a trial to convict and remove from office a man who left office yesterday. And by the time we get around to that trial in a few more days, that's going to be an even stranger proposition. Why are the Democrats spending the Senate's time in an obsessive inquest against a private citizen when we could be focused on what really matters, like getting more vaccines out to Americans or helping Americans get back to work or defending this country from the threats we face abroad? That's just the common sense view of things, Hugh. Now, I think the Constitution really couldn't be much plainer. It says that the President, the Vice President, and civil officers of the United States shall be subject to impeachment, conviction, and removal from office. Donald Trump is none of those things now. And to put a punctuation mark on that, Hugh, the reports I'm hearing in the Senate is that the Democrats propose not to have John Roberts preside over this trial because the Chief Justice only presides over the trial against the President. And if that's in fact their position, they are admitting that Donald Trump is no longer the president and therefore is not susceptible to impeachment proceedings. The whole thing, again, to me just shows how obsessive the Democrats and the media have become about Donald Trump over these last 5 years. Donald Trump may no longer live in the White House, but he is living rent-free in the heads of Democrats and the media.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
What do we make of Joe Biden occupying the White House? Because I have a lot of thoughts on it. Well, my main question is, what are your thoughts of where we are now?
We are in the midst of a new administration that is going to radically change every single piece of government that they touch. We have seen in the first 24 hours the signing of some 17 executive orders that have stopped the border wall construction. They have renewed visa permits coming from countries where people cannot be vetted, like Syria and Iran and Yemen. They have engaged our enemies in a completely different way. I mean, by that, China and Iran and Russia. They have already spent tax dollars that you and I have paid to help fund abortions that have already happened in other countries outside of our borders now. These are all things that they came in on day one, signed 17 different pieces of paper, and are already transforming American policy in all of these different areas into a very different direction.
But this is obviously what America wanted, is it not?
That's what we're told. That's what we have evidently walked through the process to approve of. And the question now becomes, what do Americans think about what they've gotten? And are they going to have buyer's remorse? If people thought that the unity that we heard so much about yesterday was going to be anything that resembled actual unity, they were mistaken.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with
Okay, everybody, final segment with Michael Walsh, the novelist, screenwriter, political commentator, Renaissance man. Good man, I might add. Book Last Stands, which is doing much better than I expected, not because it's not a great book, but because great books don't do well that often, because it's deep, and I'm very happy to see how well it's doing. It is up at DennisPrager.com. Last Stands, Why Men Fight When All Is Lost. So, have we produced a generation that would fight in the United States like previous generations did?
Well, that's a good question, Dennis. I address it obliquely in the first chapter of Last Stands, which is called To Die For, and it's the philosophical underpinning of all that comes afterwards. And I say in that chapter, if there's nothing worth dying for, then what is worth living for? We have become such a self-protective, may I say, feminized society in that our physical survival is really all that matters, that we've forgotten why we're here in the first place. Now, this is obviously a question that divides the religious from the irreligious. You're a devout Jew, and I am as faithful a Catholic as I can possibly manage under the circumstances. But we are both men of faith, and we believe there are things that we cannot understand, but that we instinctively feel in our hearts and react to. Now, the question about the younger generation, would they fight? I think the more important question is, can they fight? They're so physically out of shape. The Army is really finding it hard to find recruits. They're fat, or they're too skinny. They're weak. They haven't had any physical challenges in their life. I think we would find it hard to repel a widespread invasion of the United States in which the citizens would be called upon to fight. And I think you never want to have that, because that's how empires and nations end. That's how Rome ended, for two reasons. One is its women stopped producing children, and I emphasize this in my description of the Battle of Cannae, which wiped out 50 to 75,000 Roman soldiers on one afternoon. The reason the Romans were able to repel Hannibal was their women were extraordinarily fertile, and the women felt that was their duty to the Roman state. That was their job. So when that happens, and when you have, as the Romans did, a huge influx of foreigners who were given Roman citizenship by various emperors currying favor, then you have prescription for the end of the nation state, and that's what happened to Rome circa 476, as we know.
You raised the issue of if there is nothing worth dying for, then what's worth living for? I couldn't agree more. I posed a question, to really bring it up to date and in a context that most people would not think applies to war. You heard me open up the hour by saying it's dedicated to the Chicago Teachers Union, which won't go to class because they're afraid of dying from COVID from fifth graders, something that is rarer than dying in a car crash. Cowardice is now honorable. That I do think is new, because why is there no teacher that will say, the risk of dying may exist, but compared to kids not having school for a year, it's minuscule, but you don't hear that.
No, well, we've become, as I say, a feminized society, and that will actually be the subject of my next book, Dennis. Now that I've done the men, I'm going to take on the women for the next book, but that'll be a few years down the road. But still, this COVID thing is a very good example, and I'm going to write about it. As you know, the listeners may be interested to know I write a column every week in the Epoch Times, which is a very fast-growing
It's terrific.
newspaper.
They got a big interview with me in it, just for the record.
Yes, and I've seen you've written for them from time to time.
They're terrific, yep.
So I want to write about this COVID thing. What is worth living for? COVID has a 99.99% survival rate. Is it bad? Yes, it's bad. Have we had worse things? Yes, of course we have. Here's the question, the moral question, which I would like to see some men stand up for, because I don't, frankly, expect the women to do this. They're different creatures, and you and I can go into that at another time.
We will.
Is there no man that will stand up and say, enough, stop it. It is not worth the destruction of everything you and I hold dear. Music, theater, motion pictures, culture, assemblies, town hall lectures. We have allowed a destruction of all that makes Western civilization wonderful, and we are cowering about a bug. Please.
Bless you.
This is disgraceful behavior, and it needs to be called out. I'm rather exercised about this.
Yes, we both are. Okay, everybody, we'll do a part two. He's just great. Last Stands, Why Men Fight When All Is Lost. Thank you so much, Michael.
Hey, thanks, Dennis. I appreciate it.
Right. Nerve Renew is one of the few products I have asked to advertise on my show. I had very serious tingling in my feet, so much so that I needed to get inserts, which did work. They were very helpful. They took the bone off the nerve. After taking Nerve Renew for 9 months to a year, I threw away the inserts after 5 years. Give it a try, 2-week try, and a year money-back guarantee. NerveRenew.com.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Hey, Mike, this is Tom in Chicago. It costs $20 million a day for the Senate to convene. They're wasting more money when they have the people's work to do. Just what is wrong with these people?
Great question. I wish I had the answer. Well, I've got a couple of answers. Senator Rand Paul this week on Fox News suggested what will happen to the Republican Party if Republicans go along with this cockamamie plan to convict Trump of inciting an insurrection.
My fear is that if
Republicans, particularly Republican leadership, goes along with this impeachment, they'll destroy the party. And so I think it's a huge mistake. I think it's a hugely partisan exercise on the part of the Democrats. But for Republicans who go along with it, I think they'll destroy our party. Donald Trump isn't everything in the party, but he did bring a lot of people to the party. And I think it's a huge mistake for people to say, oh, well, we're just going to impeach him and that all of the blue-collar workers that he brought to our party are going to stay. No, I think quite a few of them will be unhappy. So I hope our leadership will think twice about these undercurrents and rumblings about them actually voting for impeachment. I sure hope it doesn't happen.
That was Senator Rand Paul during the inaugural ceremonies. That was the band and all that in the background. He was on Fox News.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Now, I just want to finish this list of things that Democrats have said over the years about Republicans, just to let you know that this business about healing, and the only reason that they were so angry about Donald Trump is because Donald Trump was Donald Trump. They've never had this kind of venom towards Republicans before. He just brought a whole new level of angst, and he just brought it out of Democrats. And you can't just blame him because Donald Trump brought it out. 2012 Republican National Convention. After that convention, the Democrat DNC chairman, John Burton, said, and I'm quoting, "Republicans lie. They don't care if people think they lie. As long as you lie," Joseph Goebbels said, "the big lie, you just keep repeating it," end of quote. Goebbels, the propaganda minister of Adolf Hitler. The chairman of the South Carolina Democratic Party in 2012 compared the state's Republican governor to Hitler's mistress. I think he married her in the bunker. Nikki Haley was down in the bunker a la Ava Braun. Maxine Waters about George Herbert Walker Bush.
Hello, my friends. Hi, everybody. I'm Dennis Prager, and I tell you, some things just stay in my mind. I bring to you so many items from the news, from the world of thought, but some things do stay. The Chicago Teachers Union reneging on its promise, on its own agreement, is not going to go to school. They're afraid of catching COVID from kids. It's a combination of ignorance and cowardice that is unprecedented in American life. We are witnessing organized cowardice and ignorance on levels that we have never before. And that is something to be aware of. Every generation apparently has a fight. It's very few generations do not have a war. And I think that a lot of Americans like myself sort of assumed that we could get away with no war. Now, of course, we've had wars in the course of my lifetime, certainly with in Vietnam and in Iraq, and Afghanistan, and other places, but nothing quite on the level. Well, Vietnam was a biggie, but nothing like World War II. And in other words, if you didn't have a loved one in Vietnam, you could go and live a normal life at the time, and certainly with regard to the other wars. But not all wars are with bullets, and some wars are cultural wars, which are as intense just hopefully not as violent, or not violent at all, hopefully. So such is the war in the United States at this time, and it is imperative to fight. The schools are the schools and the media are two of the fronts. If you want to use the war analogy, which I think is completely apt, you could say that schools and media are two of the fronts. The media is lost. There is no answer to the privatization of the New York Times, Washington Post, etc. There is no solution. They're lost to people who take truth seriously. So you have to just then go to other media where you believe that you can get truth, or where at least there isn't the fraud of we are neutral. If the New York Times announced they're a left-wing organ, I would never attack it. There you go. They're honest. This is what we. If the colleges did that, if the schools did that, we're here not to teach your children, but to make them into leftists. I would have no issue. It is the fraud that people have somehow bought, that these people are not dedicated to producing like-minded leftists. Anyway, so there are these fronts, the schools, and that's why I beg you, there you can do something. You can take your kid out of school, and you should. And if there's no reason to send them to college, there's no reason to send them to college. We hire at PragerU without any concern whether you went to college, whether you went to a prestigious college or no college. Are you a quality human being with capabilities? Will you work hard? And do you have talent? Those are our criteria. Obviously, do you share our values? Our values are very simple. At life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's pretty good stuff. I am puzzled at half of America that knows that their kids are being told that what their parents believe is crap, and they ignore it. I mean, I respect completely the parent who says, look, I know my kid is being poisoned, but I don't have the money to send the child to another school, and I don't have the ability to homeschool. All right, I respect they realize they're not fooling themselves about the poisoning of their children against America, against liberty, against capitalism, against whites, and against the parents, against religion. It's hard to know what they actually do stand for. It's all a hatred of so many wonderful things. So my daily or nearly daily appeal that you take your kid out of school, and people who cite me always say public schools, but I always say public and private. Private schools are no better than public schools. Why would you think they would be? Some are, obviously. Thank God there are exceptions. I hope you find them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have regularly people who know about homeschooling much more than I do, and they will educate you on how that can take place without the upheaval in your life that you probably fear would happen. And I don't blame you for fearing would happen. But it is doable, and it's your child, for God's sake. Ask the parents whose kid is alienated from them because the parent had the audacity to vote for Donald Trump, and the kid won't talk to them or has contempt for them, if in retrospect they would have homeschooled their kid.
Dennis Prager Show.
Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Question is on immigration. I asked Peter Baker yesterday if the president's new proposal of an 8-year path to citizenship and stopping the wall was an opening bid or a bottom line. And he agreed with me that if it's a bottom line, it's dead on arrival. Do you agree with that?
Well, I certainly hope so, and I'll do everything I can to make it so. But let's remember, Hugh, even if it's just an opening bid, there's an element of kabuki theater here. Joe Biden may be expecting some willing Republican accomplices to swoop in at the last minute with a big leap of enforcement, like money for drones or something at the southern border. We should be anticipating that highly stylized gambit right now, and we should reject it out of hand right now. Republicans should not pass an amnesty first bill that puts an amnesty in place for 15 million illegal immigrants while also increasing guest workers visas at a time when we still have 10 million people out of work. The focus should be on getting Americans back to work and getting our border secure and enforcing immigration laws at the place of employment. This bill, by the way, is not just lacking in enforcement, Hugh. It actually guts enforcement. It guts the E-Verify program that we already have in place that some states use on a mandatory basis that we should use nationwide. So
let me ask you, Senator, very quickly, is it an absolute must-have, the completion of at least 700, and I would prefer 900 miles of wall of the sort that President Trump has built?
No, Hugh, I don't think the wall in itself is the only, or is a critical point that would get Senate Republicans to vote for an amnesty. No, we shouldn't proceed to a discussion of a bill that's going to be focused on giving American jobs to foreign workers.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Can you imagine the President of the United States feeling an obligation, I guess, to his people to bring up these two things, which I consider essentially fake? I mean, the idea that anybody that you know or I know would agree with white nationalism or domestic terrorism, much less be a part of it, is just outstanding. It is breathtaking to me that he said this in an inaugural speech where he's calling for unity. I just...
No, you're not by yourself. And there's a lot of people that are pointing to the same realities, that it's one thing to have rhetoric that talks about being unified. And here's something else I think we all need to just get over. Unity may on some level be virtuous, but it is not the highest of virtues. And there are virtues that are actually much more valuable from a moral and even civil scale. And one of those is freedom. Take out all.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dennis Prager. I just want to remind you that in October, is it? Yeah, October. Taking listeners to Israel. There's a banner on the website with regard to that, and it is something you will want for the usual reasons, because Israel is so great to visit, and because you will be with hundreds of wonderful people. It's really a kindred spirit tour, and of course I'll be with you, and so will my friend Mike Gallagher. So you will really want to do this. Now you can appreciate that you have to take advantage of great opportunities when they come. There's a Stand With Us banner at DennisPrager.com. And you have till May. You could cancel, get all your money back if you have reservations about it or whatever. So, my friends, let me review some of your calls here. Bob in New Hampshire. Have you, Dennis, taken the vaccine? What do you think about not taking it? I have not taken the vaccine. I was hoping that I'd get COVID from two young people who live in my home, and they just had it a couple of weeks ago, but I kept testing negative, which is probably because of my ivermectin and zinc and hydrochloroquine. I much rather have the antibodies owing to having had COVID. I've never spoken about vaccines in all of my career. I've never taken it. It's just never registered on my worry scale. But this is a unique thing. The DNA. We're not inoculated with the virus itself to produce antibodies, but there's a DNA issue. I'm not saying it's not good. I'm only saying that I personally will only take it if I can not travel unless I take it. So that's my own position. But I'm not telling anybody not to take it. I would, however, ask young women to read about possible issues with regard to the pregnancy. That's the only group I would ask to do research before they got it. So that's my answer on that one. Okay, let's see. Yeah, we don't have enough time to take a call. Too bad. I would love to take more of them. I began the show with the President Biden nixing the XL pipeline, and then reading an article of a man, an environmentalist, who said we cannot go back to normal. Normal is to the left what the cross is to Dracula. I'm Dennis Prager.